Welcome to Foundation Fridays. This is an offshoot of the Reverse Reset Restore podcast, which is all about exploring different ways you can reverse mindsets, reset behavior, and restore your life. This is the place where we talk about the books that are reshaping thoughts and belief systems, teaching us and guiding us into a deeper knowing of ourselves. Think of it as the book club for the soul. I'm your host, Sally, and I'm creating whole new worlds for myself, one page at a time. Welcome to our second Foundation Friday episode exploring the book The Myth of Normal by Gabor and Daniel Mate. If you're joining me for the second episode, I want to begin by grounding us again. In the first episode, we spent time looking outward at the culture and conditions that shape us. We explored how stress, burnout, anxiety have become so normalized that we often stop questioning them. We talked about how functioning isn't the same as thriving, and how coping, while sometimes necessary, can quietly replace care. We also began to widen the lens on trauma, not as something that only happens in extreme circumstances, but as something that can arise through chronic stress, disconnection, and the absence of safety or attunement. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I'd recommend starting there, not because you need to understand what comes next in this episode, but because it can help create a bit more context and containment for this conversation. You can pause here if you'd like and come back when you're ready. No rush. Or feel free to stick along and listen anyway. And if you have listened already to that first episode, thank you for staying with this work. I know it is not easy. I know it can be quite painful, but hopefully there's enough aha moments and things that resonate with you that give you hope and give you a sense of you're not feeling so isolated and alone as we can all feel at times. Today, we're going to turn inward. But as usual, with anything we do here at Reverse Reset Restore, we're doing so with care. This book isn't about analysing ourselves or we're trying to fix something. It is helpful to understand what it costs us to adapt, especially when that adaptation begins so early. So I want to begin with something every single one of us have in common, our childhood. Now, that's not to say your childhood was the same as mine, but that we all had a childhood in some form or another. We don't get to adulthood without it, right? Because the myth of normal and the ways we learn to adapt in order to survive often start much earlier than we realize. It starts in childhood. Sometimes it starts before we've even arrived. When safety isn't guaranteed, our nervous system learns to adjust. It learns when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to reach and when to hold back. These adjustments don't happen because something is wrong with us. They happen because something mattered. If you're like me, you've probably spent chunks of your time and of your brain power worrying or fretting or believing that there is something wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you, my love. You are wonderfully and fearfully made. You are brilliant. You have so much to offer this world. This world is a better, more complete place because you are here existing in this time with us. So thank you for being who you are. And just know that even though some of us have been through some hideous things, or we've had experiences that have felt hopeless or have been so painful and so detrimental to us in so many ways, that if we allow ourselves the courage and the tenacity to look beyond those hurts and those pains, and recognize that there was learning, that there was growth, that there was a way that has made, informed, and shaped you into the person you are today. Warts and all, there is nothing that can happen to us that we can't overcome. And I know that that sounds ridiculous. If you are in a place of immense pain, that kind of thing feels very flippant, right? It feels very disingenuous. And I don't mean it that way at all. I want you to be encouraged to know that no matter the circumstances of your life, no matter how terrible it has been, and you've been dealt a shit hand, that even in spite of all of that, and I mean, my gosh, there is some hideous things that we are being exposed to in the world at the moment. I have to personally believe that anything that I've endured, I've coped with, has been an opportunity for me to really become a better version of myself, to become a more empathetic, more loving, more humanity conscious person. And I fail a lot of the time. I have a lot of rage and I have a lot of hurt that I'm working through. And it's easy to look at the world and it's easy to look at the circumstances we've been under or we've been exposed to and feel extremely pained. I've gone off on a tangent, I know, but that is why this book, for me anyway, feels so relevant, so time important as to what is going on. There are things that have been exposed in the world, the cultural stuff that is happening, the wars, the insidious nature of man, I guess. And it's having an impact on so many of us. And it's something I think we need to talk firmly about. And this is why the myth of normal is so vital, I think personally, for us to read and to connect with and understand that what we've been abiding by, what we've been coping with or enduring or living under is this idea of complacency, of making things that shouldn't be normal. We've normalized them to our own detriment and we've adapted. So coming back to my whole point of adaptation is that adaptation is really a form of intelligence and it's something that innately nature does. And one of the most important things to name here in the context of us adapting to this normalcy of our everyday lives, our families, our cultural, our society, is that adaptation is not weakness, it's intelligence, especially when it comes to children. So children don't adapt because they're fragile. They adapt because they are wired for connection. We as humans are designed to connect to other people. So when we are as children are in situations where being ourselves is actually threatening to that connection to whoever it may be, whether it was our parents or other family members or even society, children adjust. They learn what's acceptable, what's too much, and what needs to be hidden. And it's not conscious, it's not strategic, it's an instinctive thing that is wired within each of us. Mate talks about a core dilemma that sits beneath so much of this work, and that is the choice between attachment and authenticity. And maybe a child that grows up into an adult, that attachment will always win. Because without attachment, survival isn't possible. We are meant to be connected to each other. So to be shunned from society, to be ousted from our families are things that just are not going to be good mentally, physically, anything for anybody. So what often will happen is that attachment will take place of being your authentic self as a safety mechanism. So if expressing anger or sadness or fear or need was to risk disconnection, then we as the child learn to silence those parts. Not forever, we hope, just until it's safe. But there's a problem with that. One, the body remembers, the body keeps the score. And also, a lot of us learn those coping mechanisms in childhood and take them forward into our adulthood. So instead of being able to be our authentic self, we stick with that adaptation, that attachment, that security of knowing that we won't be shunned if we push down who we authentically are. Now, for many people, this adaptation looks like being good. You're the good child, the easy one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't cause trouble. This is me all over. From the youngest age I can recall, I have always felt the need to be good. And not just good, perfect. The ideal daughter, sister, niece, cousin, grandchild, pupil, friend. And it's a role I have spent my life perfecting. Always trying to be good, to be perfect, and somehow still never measuring up to my self-imposed normal. My good, my perfectionism, my obedience is deeply rooted to shame. And as Gabor puts it, people bearing trauma's scars almost uniformly develop a shame-based view of themselves at the core, a negative self-perception most of them are all too conscious of. Among the most poisonous consequences of shame is the loss of compassion for oneself. The more severe the trauma, the more total that loss. Being good often means being agreeable, being self-sufficient, being emotionally contained. And the world rewards this. Teachers praise it, workplaces promote it, families rely on it. So it feels like success. But there's a cost. Because every time we override a feeling, a need, a truth, something gets stored away. And Mate names this clearly. Authenticity is the most fundamental aspect of health. When authenticity is repeatedly sacrificed for belonging, the self slowly recedes. Not dramatically. There isn't any bells and whistles or blaring alarms. No, the self goes quietly until one day we realize we don't quite know what we feel or what we want or what our body needs because we've disconnected from our body and our wants and our needs. And this realization, at least for me, can feel like grief. But it's grief delayed because many people don't feel the impact of this early. They function well, they achieve, they cope, or rather endure. And the cost often shows up later in burnout, in chronic illness, in anxiety or depression, even a sense of emptiness that's hard to name. So we go chasing things or people or stuff or success or money or whatever we have placed a value on as a value for ourselves. And what it costs us is not our fault. It's not because something went wrong or you weren't good enough or you were a bad person. It's because the body can only carry so much self-silencing before it asks for attention and before it finally snaps to a point where it will demand that attention from you. And that's definitely my experience. As I've gone into my 40s and now I'm in my 50s, my body has started to really break down in a way I don't think is typical of a 50-year-old. I think it's typical of someone who has spent 50 years holding trauma within, trying to be that perfect person, trying to be that good person, whatever good might mean, right? And this is where I think Mate has provided another insight, which I find powerful for myself. It's when we are not seen for who we are, we learn to abandon ourselves. Have you abandoned who you are? Because I know there's been times I sure have. I've been told I'm too much. I've been told I've been a drama queen, or that I'm too emotional. Excuse me for having feelings. I've been told that I should know better. I've been told, growing up in the church and I said that I wanted to be a writer, that good Christian girls don't become writers or actors. That's not a godly thing to do, which always confused me, because I was like, well, then why did God give me this gift of writing? If he didn't want me to use it, that makes no sense at all. So we learn, though, culturally, in our families and society and schools and everything that we're surrounded by in our environments, that we as our authentic self doesn't appear to be good enough. We need to fit the molds. We need to curtail to other people's demands and expectations, who are also self-abandoning, by the way. And we feel like the less we are ourselves, that somehow we're failing who we are, but we're achieving or we're succeeding in life. This is just my thinking and my interpretation of this. Self-abandonment isn't a moral failing. It is a learned strategy, and it deserves understanding, not shame. You deserve understanding and grace and love and compassion, not the shame and the hatred and the self-denial and the fear and the anxiety and the worry and the fury that perhaps you've been living under, trying so desperately to fit in at all costs. I want to offer a question that you can sit with or set it aside, up to you. Who did you learn to be in order to belong? Yeah, it's a huge question, right? And it is a powerful one to ask ourselves, and it's one that's a bit scary, actually, to sit with. And because I've asked this question, what did you learn to be in order to belong? You might immediately notice that your brain or your body will tell you. You might notice that it's a role that you had to step into. Maybe you had to become mum to your younger siblings, or an emotion that you learned to hide. Like for me, being told that I was being a drama queen made me feel like my emotions were not valid, or that I was being told that I'm too much made me feel like I had to make myself small. You might notice that that is another way that you have made yourself smaller or quieter or stronger than you actually needed to be. So when you think about that question, don't go any further than feel safe. If it makes you scared or if it makes you uncomfortable, just be aware of that. And it's okay that question might frighten you a little bit. It frightened me the first time I thought about it. It was like, oh, that's going to dredge up quite a lot of stuff, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. But it's just the awareness is really what the work is about here. In the next part of this episode, we're going to talk about what happens when we turn towards these adaptations with compassion instead of judgment. Because the way back isn't through fixing what we think is wrong, it's through understanding what was required for us to exist, to survive. What we needed to do to fit the status quo, to feel that sense of belonging, to avoid that disconnection or the reactions of other people. If we're honest, many of us carry an inner voice that's always watching, or more to the point, always talking. It might ask, why am I like this? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just get it together? Why am I such a loser? Why haven't I figured this out yet? And this voice can often sound reasonable, even when it's not actually that reasonable. But beneath what it's saying to us is usually something else, and it's fear, exhaustion, shame, and blame. And blame, especially self-blame, really leads to healing. Blame gives us the illusion of control. If the problem is me, then maybe I can fix it. So we scrutinize ourselves, our reactions, our habits, our coping mechanisms, and we try to be better, right? We try to be calmer, more resilient, less sensitive, more likable. In my personal case, more agreeable and less dramatic. Stop taking things so personally. Turn the other cheek. Learn to take a joke. Be more subservient. Make yourself feel uncomfortable so that others aren't. Make yourself small so that you can shine the spotlight on other people. Don't ever allow the spotlight to be seen on you. And this is a chronic condition in the Australian and New Zealand culture. This tall poppy syndrome, I've talked about it before. I'm going to briefly tangent off for a second just to say that we are very, very, very good at making ourselves the butt of jokes, of pulling other people down or pulling ourselves down a lot of the time so that other people can't pull us down, and keeping ourselves from talking about how amazing and stunning and wonderful and effervescent we truly are. Because God forbid we say something nice about ourselves. I come from a culture, the New Zealand life, the Australian life, I don't know whether it's an English thing, colonization, but it's definitely a disgusting habit that we have, which is to make ourselves the butt of jokes, to fit in, to make ourselves small so that we don't look like we're too cocky or too up ourselves. And it was one thing I really appreciated living in America. When I lived in the US, as much as American exceptionalism is chronically dysfunctional, there is some good aspects to it. And the way that they prop themselves up and everything is amazing and everything is good can be really beneficial. And I think that would be one thing I think that we could learn a little bit from. But, most of us will get into this habit of trying to shove ourselves down so that we don't upset the apple cart. But Mate invites us to ask a different question. Not what's wrong with me or how can I make myself smaller, but instead he asks, what happened and what did I need? What did I need that I didn't get? I know that's another colossal question that shifts us into all sorts of uncomfortable spaces in our thoughts and our body. And even as I ask myself this question again right here, right now, recording this, I feel my body respond. The reaction is immediate. There's a swirling in the pit of my belly, the tightness in my throat, like my own myths of normal want to silence me rather than sit in that uncomfortable truth. The truth being that things happened to me and what was needed, what was not, and how those needs were met or ignored have shaped all the days behind me. And to be honest, this feeling, it doesn't sit very well. But it's a symptom of my body's innate intelligence, an intelligence that is always working for my good, even when it feels like my body has been weaponized against me. One of the most radical shifts in this work is the reframing of symptoms. Anxiety isn't weakness. Numbness isn't failure. Burnout isn't laziness. They are signals. They are responses. They're attempts by the body and the nervous system to protect us. Mate puts it simply, we cannot shame ourselves into wholeness. Shame tightens while understanding softens. And softening is where change becomes possible. I'm not going to speak for anyone but myself here, but there's often in my life resistance to self-compassion. I'm so compassionate to everybody else. I'm even compassionate to things I don't like spiders and cockroaches and insects. I don't want to see them hurt. I don't want to live with them, but I don't want them to hurt either. So there's a lot of compassion that I can extend to other people and other things in the world. But when it comes to myself, it's been a challenge. And again, that's part of that adaptation that I've made to survive. So self-compassion can feel like we're letting ourselves off the hook or that we're making excuses. But compassion isn't denial. It's clarity. It recognizes that behavior doesn't arise in a vacuum. It arises in context. When we see the context clearly, the blame that we might have once assigned kind of becomes unnecessary. And the energy that was tied up in a self-attacked mode actually becomes available for care, for compassion or empathy. And this is where I think the work outlined in this book becomes really practical, because it's not in actions that it becomes practical, but rather in orientation. And what I mean by orientation is things like, rather than saying, why am I so reactive? I can now go, what feels unsafe here? Instead of why can't I rest, I might ask, what did rest once cost me? So by reframing our initial response to something, our initial question, which usually is quite self-abusive, we ask instead questions that don't demand immediate answers, but they invite relationship. Just to go back to an earlier point, and a point that I make time and time again in our episodes, nothing about you is broken. Something in you learned to survive. That survival may no longer be serving you, but it once did. And honoring that truth is not backwards, it's not denial, it's actually integrative. If you're willing right now, I just want you to notice one thing that you often judge yourself for, and see if you can hold it next to this question. What might this have protected me from? Again, I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not asking you to try to reframe it into a positive affirmation of some sorts. Just being a bit curious, allowing some reflection to come in and awareness. What might have this thing that you often judged yourself for actually been a protective layer from? The exciting thing about when blame loosens its grip, something else becomes possible. And that doesn't have to be a dramatic transformation. I guess for a lot of us, a lot of the time, it's going to be this quieter kind of hope. In the final part of this episode, we'll talk about what hope looks like and when it isn't driven by self-improvement. A hope grounded in awareness, in gentleness, in coming back to ourselves slowly, lovingly. Let's pause for just a moment. If you feel comfortable, I encourage you to just place a hand somewhere on your body, somewhere that feels comforting. Maybe on your chest or your arm, your lap, just some part of your body. Take one slow breath in and remind yourself, I'm allowed to take this in slowly. Breathe out and just sit with yourself for a moment, noticing your breath, noticing where your hand is placed on your body, the pressure, the feeling, the sensation. Try to feel that with a sense of love if you can. In this segment of this episode, I want to talk about how getting back to ourselves is really a gentle process. It's through awareness, providing some hope and some insight and some compassion. Because when we start to see ourselves with more compassion, a familiar urge often shows up, and that urge is to do something with that insight, right? To change, to heal faster, to become better. But this work, this book, The Myth of Normal, isn't asking that of us. It's not requiring us to suddenly try to fix something immediately. And that's the problem that most of us have. We have a problem, we need a solution, and we need to find it yesterday. But this work is asking us to do something quieter. So much of what we are taught about healing mirrors our productivity culture. So we've got to set goals, we've got to track progress, we've got to measure improvements. A little bit of a newsflash for at least me, but our nervous system doesn't heal through pressure. It doesn't like me trying to put demands on it, or get angry with it, or get frustrated by it, or tell it's got to be fixed by XYZ date. And kind of just mocks me, I think, when I try to force my own will upon it. Because the nervous system heals through safety. And safety grows in spaces where there is no demand to perform. There is no expectation for perfection. There is no need to meet a goal or someone's agenda. Mate offers this reminder: we heal not by forcing change, but by understanding. Understanding creates room. Room allows softening, and softening makes reconnection possible. So awareness is the first act of our healing journey, and it's not passive, it's relational. It's the act of turning toward ourselves, I think, without flinching, without demanding. Awareness is noticing when we are feeling braced, when we're exhausted, when we override our needs, when we put ourselves last because we feel like we have to perform. And it's meeting that noticing of where we are in whatever moment we become aware with kindness rather than correction. And this is why Mate says awareness is the first act of healing. The first act of healing is not insight, it's not effort, it's not expectations, it's not berating yourself. It is awareness and compassion. I want to offer one more way Gabor reframes illness and healing, because it moves us even further away from that idea that something is wrong with us. A disease is not like a thing. It is energy flow. It's a current. It is evolution or de-evolution that occurs when you're not awake and connected, and trauma is essentially ruling your life. It is such a mistake to identify it as a thing, because that makes it hard matter, when it is in fact a much more psychological, spiritual, emotional condition. When we stop treating our experiences as broken parts and start listening to them as communication, the work changes. Healing becomes less about fixing and more about reconnecting. Much of this reconnection happens through the body, not through analysis, but through sensation, feeling our feet on the ground, noticing our breath, recognizing tension without needing to release it. The body doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be listened to. And listening doesn't require expertise, just presence. I don't know if this is a situation that you find yourselves in, but like most women, when I want to regurgitate things to my partner about something that's frustrating or confusing or annoying, or I need to kind of just get my head around, I say something, but he's listening to fix the problem. And I just want him to listen for listening's sake. I just want him to be there so I can spew out whatever's coming out of my brain and my thoughts and my feelings. And then it kind of like resets me. I've let it out into the wild, into the world, into the room. And now my brain is able to go, okay, cool. We've now got that out there, cleared out the clutter from the mind, from the body, and we can move forward. He, on the other hand, is trying to fix the problem, find a solution. Sometimes there isn't a solution. Sometimes there's just I need to get this out and I want you to listen. I don't expect you to fix it or solve it or be the expert in it. Just provide your presence. That's enough. That's the kind of thing that helps me when I'm working through some of this stuff myself is, I don't actually have to fix this problem that's suddenly been raised to my attention or this feeling that's suddenly in the pit of my stomach. I just need to be aware that it's there, and I need to be present with myself, present with that thought that's just a thought, present with that feeling, acknowledge that there's a feeling that exists there, and not try to undermine it, not try to deny it or absolve it, but literally just give it my time and my presence. I think there is a particular kind of courage in going slowly and doing this kind of work to a very snail's pace that it feels at times. And, not rushing towards trying to have a resolution, but allowing that healing to unfold in its own time. Slowness is something that I'm not very good at doing. I get frustrated by. But I'm trying really hard to recognize that slowness, when it comes to our healing journey, says, I trust my system and I don't need to override myself anymore. I have brutalized myself so many times with the language that I've used in my frustrations, in my desire, and my desperation, really, to be healed, to be whole, to get through this latest course of disease and illness or whatever's going on. And that frustration and that need to rush through continues the disconnection. For many people, slowing down is where we're going to get the deepest repair. But it is really frustrating. I do acknowledge that. Because part of the myth of normal that we've believed in is the idea that things need to happen now. It's why we have so many quick fixes and false promises, right? We don't trust slow. We are so desperate for healing that we prolong it in our own haste. I know how angry I've been, and I still am at times, for my body for not releasing the weight that I want it to just be like, let go of, for the chronic pain that I have, for seemingly undermining me at every twist and turn of my life. And this rage that I have had towards my body does not bring healing. It only brings more pain, more disconnection, more trauma. A vicious circle was practically my middle name. Maybe you can relate. But this book reminds me that slowness isn't losing. It isn't a race. It isn't a competition against anyone, even myself. Slowness is time to heal. It's time to heal, to break away from the myth of normal I have believed myself to be my whole life, and step into my authentic self with a sense of hope rather than helplessness. And hope in this context isn't optimism. It's not the belief that everything will be fine and she'll be right. Hope is the understanding that you don't have to do this alone, that your responses to different circumstances and situations and your experiences make sense, and nothing essential about you has been lost. Hope is the experience of being in relationship with yourself again. If you're willing, just ask yourself this next question gently. What would it feel like to stop trying to fix yourself and start listening instead? Before we close, I want to help us come back into our bodies, so we're not carrying all of this only in our minds. I'll offer a short grounding practice, and you're welcome to join in or simply listen. This is just an invitation to arrive back in your body and to recognize it in a way that maybe you've never experienced it before, or it's been a really long time for you to have this experience with your body, and to meet it with a new level of understanding and maybe even a little bit of hope and love. If it feels okay, let your body settle wherever you are. You don't need to change anything, just notice. Notice where you're sitting, or if you're lying down, whatever you're doing. Notice the places where your body is supported. Take a slow breath in through your nose and let it fall out through your mouth slowly. You don't need to breathe deeply, just an honest sort of breath for you. I want you to bring your attention to your feet. Even if they feel numb or tingly or distant, that's okay. Just noticing is enough. Now notice one thing you can hear. Maybe a sound in the room, or a sound outside, or even the quiet. Now, I want you to notice one thing you can feel. The fabric on your skin, the temperature of the air, the weight of your body being held. If any emotions are still present, sadness, relief, tenderness, shame, whatever that emotion might be, see if you can let them be there without needing to explain or resolve them. You might quietly say to yourself, I'm here. I'm safe enough in this moment. When you're ready, gently return your attention to this space, to your day, carrying only what feels manageable for you. If this episode has left you feeling maybe a bit tender or vulnerable, just please be gentle with yourself as you move back into your day. You'll find reflection prompts and grounding resources in the show notes if you'd like something to support you after listening. And if Reverse Reset Restore has been a place that helps you slow down or feel less alone, one of the simplest ways to support the podcast is to follow, leave a review, or share an episode with someone who might need it. And this Foundation Friday episode with the Gabor Mate book may be something that another person you know might find really helpful. Thank you so much for being with me here in this space today. I hope that these 2 episodes have helped to remind you that our traumas, whether personal, familial, culturally, or societal, have been repackaged as normal, and that we don't have to live under that myth anymore. You don't need to become someone else to heal. You're already on the way simply by listening, simply by becoming aware. I want to leave the final thought with Gabor one last time, because this quote for me captures why compassion feels so important now, perhaps more than ever. When we can come to ourselves from a place of understanding rather than judgment, we create the conditions for healing, often in ways we've never experienced before. And maybe in that space, the myth of normal begins to loosen its hold and gives way to a truer way of living, one rooted in authenticity. Gabor says, to make peace with our inner tormentors, we have to first understand them against the backdrop of their origin stories. This is the compassion of context.